Just interrupting here because I want to remind you that I'm going to be at Makers Central this year. That's the NEC Birmingham, May the 13th and the 14th, 2023. Come along and say hi. It'd be really nice to meet people who watch my channel. I'll be there. I think Claire will be there. Probably be hiding behind Claire. And there's lots of other people there to meet as well. So yeah, NEC Birmingham 2023, May 13th and 14th. I'll see you there. Hiya, welcome back to my channel. It's Wendy here from Toonpish Crafts and I hope you're doing okay. Now this video is all about money boxes. Now when I was a child, I absolutely adored my money box. And it occurred to me recently that we're not using money much these days, apart from with kids when they pop to the sweet shop or have a few pennies to spend. So I thought a money box would be a really practical product to make with resin. I found a couple of really cool, what I thought was really cool, money box moulds. And one of them I've purchased. I will put it in my Amazon storefront so that you can find it. But I thought it was really sweet. And then it occurred to me, I really want to try making my own money box somehow. So I put on my thinking cap on and I rummaged through the moulds that I had and I came up with an idea which kind of worked. Well, it did work, but we'll see. So this is the Hippo Money Bank Money Box mould, and I'm going to use Let's Resin deep pour resin for this. Now this technically is the first time I'm using this resin, although you have seen it in a video, but that was filmed after this one. So I've mixed the resin up and I've separated a tiny bit. Ooh. And after managing to avoid the disaster, I carried on mixing. Now I've put the Mr. Mica neon pink in here and I'm going to add some Arteza crystal white in this small cup so that I can mix it thoroughly before I pour it into the 250 ml of deep pour resin. This deep pour resin is extremely thin and I wanted to make sure the colour was thoroughly mixed before I mixed it into the large amount. Now the resin is extremely thin because it allows bubbles to escape over 72 hours. It's a 72-hour cure resin, but I didn't know how it would take the colour, and it's a learning curve when you try something new, isn't it? But look at that, it's a gorgeous colour. So I'm just going to pour all this beautiful pink into the Hippo. You can see how thin it is. It is like water. It is crazy thin. But the quicker the cure time of resin, the thicker the resin is. I have noticed that fast cure resin is extremely thick, and this is extremely thin. But theoretically, you don't need a pressure pot for it, so that's a good thing. I nearly forgot to put a little bit of pink in the little pocket at the bottom, and that is for the release valve to let money out. I'm loving this pink. And obviously the micro brush gets rid of any stuck bubbles. Even though this is going to go in my pressure pot, you still got to get rid of stuck bubbles. This will be the disc that goes on the front of the Hippo so that you can either see or not see the money. And I decided to see it so it's clear. So this is 3 days later. I left it in my pressure pot, although it didn't need to go in the pressure pot, I did put it in my pressure pot. This is the first time I'm seeing how the colour has arranged itself in the resin. It's very bizarre, but I'm thinking maybe the reason is because the white powder was extremely heavy and the pink wasn't. So it might be the fact, this is my own assumption mind you, that the white powder being too heavy for the resin because the resin was really thin might be the reason. And it was a real struggle getting it out the mould. But eventually I worked it out. And when I realised that you need to push the centre of the hole through, it came out quite easy. And although it's pink and spotted on the front, and the mould's perfectly fine by the way, I actually really like it. I like the fact that it's got a pink and white spotted front. Yeah, it looks really cool. I actually really like it. I will have to try out some more colours in this deep pour resin though, because I need to figure it out. So I decided to sand the edge of the disc down and stick it in the hole with E6000. E6000 is amazing glue. It's hard to get hold of in the UK and it does tend to stick in its nozzle and I have to clean it out every time I use it, but it's amazing stuff. And you can pretty much put it where you want it as well. It's not flowy, it's really easy to use. And because I'm using a plastic paintbrush, you can clean the brush out with isopropyl alcohol and no harm done. You don't have to throw it away. So I pop the disc into the hole, make sure it's pushed down nice and tight and all the glue has attached itself to the disc. And then I put the clasp back in so that I know it fits and I haven't pushed it too tight together, and I leave it to set. So now on to my own freeform type money bank, and I'm going to start by using some Let's Resin silicone rubber and make some little plugs. I'll explain why in a little while. I'm only going to make up 40ml of silicone rubber, and that is to do 2 plugs of 20ml. And I'm adding some of this new colour that I've purchased. This company was recommended to me by a subscriber who emailed me, and when I went on their site, the colours were amazing. So I spent a fair bit of money on a few different colours. This one is Inferno. The company is called Fluid Art Company, and the link will be in the description box below. And to be honest, I just wanted to try out the colour, but wow, it's bright. I think it might go well in resin. And I also need a silicone slot. Now that is going to be where the money goes into the money box. So I'm using a hole punch and I'm gluing it round the outside edge, and it's going to be the right sort of size, coincidentally, for money to go into the slot. So once I've glued it up and it's all solid, then I just fill it up with silicone. So this is a vase mould that was gifted to me. I've never used it for a vase mould, but I thought it would make a good money box mould because it has a hole in the middle. But I needed to add a slot with the silicone slot that I made, and I also need to plug the top so that we have a hole for the money to come out. So that's why I made the plug. I made 2 really just in case, but one was fine. This is the disc mould from the Hippo money box, which I thought would be ideal to go in the centre of this money box. Now, because I wanted the silicone to be completely as much as possible next to the mould, I decided to go around the outside with sellotape to hold it together, and I did the same with the hole at the other end, just to try and keep the mould together in the right place. And as if by magic, loads of coins appeared, and luckily for me, I had a place for them to go. These are all old coins. Some of them are foreign. Again, they were gifted to me, and so I decided to use them and put them in the resin. Now, the beginning of this resin pour was filmed, but my camera had another funny 5 minutes and decided not to keep it. I may have to invest in a new camera, I think. But I filled up the mould with coins, I filled up the disc with coins and resin, and I let them cure. And I'm just using standard Let's resin. So the following day I can demould it and see how it's come out. I think it's going to be okay. I'm hoping it stays in one piece because of the silicone is taking up both of the areas, and I was thinking maybe I'll end up with 2 halves, but it's no big deal, I can always fix that. So I'm taking it out very carefully in case it does fall apart in 2 halves. And as I've never used this mould for a vase, I didn't really know what it would come out like. So the silicone on the top where the slot's going to be is actually pretty much taking the entire area. So if I take that piece out, I think there'll be just one whole gap there, which is fine for the money, not so good for keeping it together. The plug end does have a little bit more resin in it to keep it together. So once I'd cut away the resin that I didn't want on the inside edge, then I had a nice round hole and there was enough resin there just to hold it together. So I decided to take out the plug as well. Now I did need a lot of trimming up on this, a lot of sorting out, a lot of cutting away of spare resin that we didn't need. And then I realised that the disc is too small. Wonderful. Plan B, let's make discs again. This time I'm using petri dishes and I figured they might be a bit oversized, but they'll fit. At least I could actually make two at the same time. And I've got a couple of really nice discs to go front and back on the money box. I've put the silicone piece back in the slot because I'm going to need to do a bit of heavy sanding to get rid of this sticky out bit of resin that is basically holding the whole thing together. So I've decided to tape it up with tape to hold it together while I sand those two bits down, so that they're flat and the discs will sit nicely on them. I'm going to need to cover this in resin. And then I had an idea. I didn't want to go down the liquid latex route. That would take forever. I needed to do all the sides, the inside, the bottom, and let it dry up. That would have taken me quite a long time. So I decided in my wisdom to use hot glue. As hot glue doesn't like sticking to tile or a shiny surface, I really cleaned this tile up to a high shine, and I glued right the way around the outside edge of the box and on the inside edge as well. My thought process was that the hot glue would stay stuck to the resin for now and release from the tile. So I had a barrier that was completely flat, and therefore I could, without worrying about overspill, use resin on the top to glue in the centre disc, and theoretically everything would be fine. It was a gamble, but I went for it. So I top coated the box itself with a small amount of resin and put some resin on the inside edge of the disc, and you can see I've put masking tape on the centre of the disc so I can hold it easily to place it into the area. Adjusted it round, made sure it was all nice and flat, and then I realised that it needed to be pushed down by something heavy because the silicone part was raising it up. So I tried a few bottles that weren't heavy enough and ended up with a large bottle of Let's resin, and that was the perfect size and the perfect weight. So the following day, when the top coat had cured, it was time to try and get the hot glue off, and I was wondering whether it worked or what mess I was going to get, and actually it worked quite well. There was one place that had pulled away from the resin and a little bit of resin had seeped underneath, but that came off quite easily. The hot glue had fused in the centre as well, and it did its job in there quite well. Not brilliantly, but it's inside, so it doesn't really matter. And yeah, generally speaking, it saved a lot of time, so I was quite happy. The other side didn't need a top coat, it was shiny enough already, so I glued the disc on with 2-part epoxy glue, and that was it, done. A couple of little finish touches, and I had 3 money banks. Now I did make a blue one as well. I had a similar reaction with the white in this one too, but I think it looks really cool. And I love the fact that you can see through the middle. As for my version, it's a little bit less vibrant in colour. It's not such a fancy shape, but it's full of money already. And I really love it. It's not everyone's cup of tea, I know, but it was a lot of fun to try it. I made a different colour stopper so it's not so vibrant in the bottom, looks more fitting to the piece. and it holds the money perfectly well. It was definitely a fun thing to try, and it's really heavy. If you don't try these things, you never know if they're going to work, do you? And I'm always trying new things. I love to try new things and to work out problems and issues. And yeah, I really enjoyed making this. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope you've got something out of it. Come back and see me next week, because you never know what I'm going to be up to. I never know what I'm going to be up to. Have a great week. Happy crafting, and bye for now.